All right. Hope everybody's doing well. This is the session on personal branding, storytelling, and sales. I'm going to stay down on the floor because I'm a giant and you can probably see me just fine like this. I want to introduce myself to you just a little bit. So my name's Tim. I'm based in St. Louis, Missouri. I work for Shapiro Metals, now known as Circular by Shapiro. Been in the recycling industry for about 9 years now, and spent most of my career in sales. When I came to Shapiro, I was working national accounts, bringing on multi-location manufacturers across the United States, Mexico, and Canada, and did a lot of work with third parties through that process. I'm currently pursuing a education and sustainability, which has a lot to do with marketing and branding and storytelling in the sustainability world. And one thing you should know about me is I'm a conservationist and an outdoorsman. Also wanted to give you just a little background on Shapiro Metals. We peddled our first pound of metal in St. Louis back in 1904. In 1904, St. Louis had the big World's Fair going on. So it's a big thing for the city. So just to set the context of what things were like when we started moving material. At the World's Fair, they debuted the Palace of Electricity, which was just a building with lights. They introduced the X-ray, and in 1904, we were all introduced to the ice cream cone. So that's what was going on when Shapiro started. In the 122 preceding years, we've grown to 9 locations across the United States and have 3 divisions. The second one is Circular, which does sustainability services for our manufacturing customers. And then Master Alloys, which buys secondary aluminum to create proprietary materials for consumers. So we're always looking for 61, 63 wheels and all kinds of other stuff. So here's what success looks like in the next 45 minutes. And yes, we're going to get out of class early if we stay on track here. But I'd like to discuss the why behind branding and personal branding, why it's important. We're going to spend the majority of our time talking about the how, some practical examples and strategies for doing that. We're going to talk about the ROI when it comes to marketing and branding. That's a little squishy. It's hard to really go one for one, but I'd like to introduce at least a construct for you to consider when it comes to that. And if you guys leave better equipped to use some of this to leverage, to create customers, create friends, bring back some good stuff for your companies, then we'll have called it a success. So why does this matter to you? Well, I got to tell you, it didn't matter to me for a long time for most of my early career in the metals industry. But let me take you back to COVID. As a salesperson, it's always hard to make cold calls and show up at a manufacturer and try and get in the door and have the right conversation. Well, after COVID, that became pretty much impossible. Judy Ferraro was the sales manager at Shapiro at the time, and she brought all the sales team into a meeting and said, hey, here's what I want you guys to do. I want you all to get on social media and LinkedIn and become thought leaders. And I'm not a big social media guy. We were all kind of scratching our heads at thought leaders and what does that mean? But a few people on the team took the challenge. And here's what happened to me. So for the first 6 years of being in the industry, I hadn't had one speaking event. I mostly kept to myself and my customers, really hadn't done any of that. But because I was starting to post online, our thought leadership was around circularity, sustainability, obviously recycled materials. Eventually, because of that, I got asked, to be a speaker on a panel at an AWMI, Association of Women in the Metals Industry event all about sustainability. And that was the first one, and that was 3 years ago. Since then, because again of Judy's push, this is, I think, speech number 14 in the last 3 years. So going from nothing for the first 6 to 14 in the last 3. I also was really interested about the technology in this industry. So I said, okay, well, I can try and be a thought leader around the cool technology that's coming in because it's coming in fast. And we got to be prepared and we got to understand it. I just started recording some podcasts, and I hated calling them podcasts. I call them web series. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But just, with people that I thought were doing cool things. Fast forward a couple years later, that's now a branded thing with the support of Shapiro, that now we're having really incredible conversations with companies like Honda, the Can Manufacturers Institute, and others about recycling and sustainability stuff. And finally, I started telling stories. I think we work in an incredible industry with all kinds of incredible stories to tell. Most people that aren't doing this every day don't get to see the structures and the processes and the systems that make sure that we've got material to use every day, or they don't know what happens when their material goes into recycling cans. So how can we tell people about those stories? I started just telling, iPhone video stories that were terrible and I can't go back and watch them today. But a couple years later, that actually turned into a storytelling outfit we call Recycle by Design. Actually had the crew here yesterday, documenting some of the history of this industry and capturing stories from people who've been doing this for twice as long as I've been alive. But none of that would have happened without trying to get online, build a personal brand, and be a thought leader like Judy encouraged us all to do. And I can tell you what, one post from one person with an established profile can really change your trajectory. This is Michael Goldstein. A lot of people know him from Mike's Mike. He gets online and he talks about, you're nodding your head. Yeah, everybody knows it, right? He talks about everything that's recyclable in our world. He'll talk about the sewer or the fence. And one day, I saw him talking about his recyclable bicycle. And I practiced that many times so I could say that correctly. And he was riding this bike race to raise money for cancer. And he had a team called Ludicrous Speed. And, we had just gone through a pretty bad cancer journey in my family. And so I was wanting to fight back. So I saw him post, I'd seen his stuff. I didn't know him at all, right? But I saw his post and I wanted to fight back against cancer. So I sent him a message. We got lunch and he told me about this thing called Pedal the Cause, which is a big bike race. Spandex isn't my color. I don't do bike races. But he told me anyway, yes, I now wear spandex. It's exciting. He told me about this cancer race. But something really interesting happened beyond that. So it changed my trajectory. I got involved in it. And yes, in case you're curious, Ludicrous Speed is absolutely a call out to the incredible movie Spaceballs. But we're at this lunch and Michael's telling me about the team, and it's an incredible team. It's a family and friends team, and they've raised a lot of money. The last year that this happened, they raised $25,000 for cancer. Really an incredible amount of money. Okay. But as we're sitting there at the table, I'm a recycler, he's a recycler, and he has this idea. He says, hey, what if this wasn't just a family and friends team? What if it was the team of the recycled materials industry? Without even thinking about it, he rebranded the team and it became that. Well, what happened after that? Because of this rebrand and because of this post, because of the social media profile that, and the brand that had been built over many years of Michael talking about recyclable stuff, we started getting all kinds of people coming into the team from all across the industry. Big companies like Centebogen, technology companies like Vizia, Waste Management, all kinds of people jumping on the team. Of course, because we were the recycled materials team, we had to bring recycled materials into the event. This event happens in September. It's over an entire weekend. We're from St. Louis, so there's a lot of beer that gets drunk during that weekend. Lots of aluminum cans that end up in the trash. So we deployed a can crusher and basically said, hey, if you want to raise more money for cancer, put your cans in this can crusher and all that money will go towards cancer research. And what happened? We had people come from all over the country to ride with us. And I'll tell you, you don't have to be in St. Louis to ride. People can ride from anywhere. In fact, we just had somebody sign up from the furthest distance away from St. Louis who's going to be riding with us here in 2026. Attila Wendell from Navigate Commodities. He's the one that uses satellites to track heat in furnaces, so he knows what's happening in the steel markets across the world. It's nuts. He's going to be riding with us from Singapore this September. We were able to talk to people about the recycling project to raise money. And we did something affectionately known as the Shake Your Can at Cancer Dance, which I'm going to just leave to your imaginations today. But if you'd like to see it, come ride with us in September. So, yeah, I'm a sales guy, so I like squishy stories, but some people like hard numbers. So what actually happened because of this rebrand and the social media post and the branding? Well, we got 20 new industry sponsors. Our ridership grew by 3 times. And we 5x'd our fundraising from $25,000 to over $125,000. All people pedaling for a world without cancer. And again, that's not us. That's the generosity of an entire industry. We've got an incredible industry. It's the generosity of an industry that had a place to go. All accelerated by this post and all accelerated by this Rally Point rebrand, right? It became a thing that people who cared about cancer and cared about recycling knew about and could rally behind. So I'm a big believer that your network is your net worth. And I'm not just talking about money here. Anybody who's been in this industry for a little while will tell you that there's a huge relational ROI for being here. But there's a lot of benefits to growing your network. I mean, again, as a basically a lifetime sales guy, you got to cold call, right? You got to have cold outreach. That sucks. It's hard. Nobody likes to do that. But the bigger you grow your network, the more people that kind of know about you and what you're into and kind of who you are, that helps. You're going to have less that cold outreach. You're going to have more collaboration, especially in the recycling, sustainability, and circularity worlds. Collaboration is the key to success. As a national account manager, I certainly put a lot of metal through Shapiro plants, but if you actually add it up, I put more metal in a brokering relationship through other scrap yards than I have at Shapiro yards because we are able to collaborate. And again, that's so important for what we do and how we move into the future. And, at the end of the day, I believe we're made for relationships. You strip out all the metal and the money and, all this, and we're here to get to know each other, right? So if you've got a tool that can accelerate that, that's helpful. And I swear this is my last AI generated scrap inspirational poster here. But, I also believe that a rising tide lifts all boats, and that's especially true for us. Awesome. There we go. So when we do brand well, whether that's you personally, whether that's your company, whether that's us as an industry, a lot of good things are going to happen for all of us, right? It's going to help our community perception. What do people think when there's a scrapyard in their community? Do they think Sanford and Sons? Do they think about where they take bodies in all the mafia movies? Or do they think about something that's critical infrastructure that's important to their lives and their livelihoods? We're not just here to, have a lot of networking and have fun at this big conference. A big part of ReMA is to make sure that we're operating in a legislatively favorable environment, right? What do our legislators think about us? We're all part of that. Workforce development. Okay. I can tell you that I personally know the generation getting out of school now is pre-programmed to care about sustainability. They know tech, they know AI, they've got all these ideas of things that want to change the world. Do they think about us, right? Do they think about this industry? I hope they do. The more that we get out there, the more they will. And recycling participation, right? Take the aluminum can, for example. We got 43% getting recycled. The rest is going to landfill. There's more aluminum in landfills, right, than there are in the bauxite mines that we're trying to get the aluminum out of in the first place. So, it's a huge problem. And what happens when we increase the recycling rates? How does that benefit all of us, right? That's a huge opportunity. So let's talk a little bit about how we actually do this. First, if you're not doing it, you should know that you're in an industry full of people who really want to see you succeed. If you're not on social media, you're not doing it yet. If you got questions, ask me. I can give you 20 people who are doing it and who are going to be happy to help you get out there and start building your brand. And it actually might have been from this very stage 2 years ago. Stuart Kagan was up here from Buddy, and he was talking about building personal brands. And he said something that stuck with me. He said, start building now because you never know when you're going to need it. Okay. It takes a long time to build a little bit of a profile online, to build your brand. You've got to be long, right? Have you ever heard that? To be long, you have to be long in something. So any way that you're building it, it's going to take time. And when you decide that you actually need it, you probably should have started 2 years ago. Do want to discuss just a little bit about the difference between branding and marketing. If you think about the Venn diagram of those two, there's a lot of overlap, but there are some differences that are important to think about. Marketing is tactics. It's a call to action, right? I actually want to have a conversion, a deal to be done. Branding is a little different. Branding is your identity, right? It's who you are. It's what you believe. It's what's important to you. And it's got a general goal, right? If there's a specific goal of conversion with marketing, branding is generally, I want to connect. So that leads to the question of who are you? This is a bigger question that we've got time for now. But if you think of books like Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, understanding your purpose is such a huge thing. And so again, that's a totally different conversation. But, at some point you've got to think about that. If you do figure that out, and I think that's something that you figure out through your whole life, you also may want to consider how you're actually going to help and bring value to the conversation. This is what a lot of people in branding and marketing will call, your persona, right? How are you going to help? Are you going to be a helper? Are you an expert in something? Are you somebody that's going to bring news? Are you going to be a cheerleader for the industry? Are you an entertainer? You remember Gladiator? I want to be the tire on the bottom left. That's not a flat tire. I like the hub and spoke mentality of being able to connect people, as I continue to grow in my career. If I can be known as somebody that, hey, you needed to know somebody and I know a guy or gal over here and I can connect you. That's what I want to be, right? So, think about how you help and add to the conversation. So let's talk a little bit about online branding, and then we'll get into real world branding after that. These are my personal guidelines. You may like some of these, not like some of these, decide to go the completely opposite way, and probably all those are perfectly acceptable. But this is the kind of things that I think about. You want to stay positive where possible. I got to thank Judy. Also, there's a couple times where I was about to light some stuff up and she talked me down from the ledge, and I appreciate that. The other thing is, I think, we're all only so interesting, or at least I am. So highlighting others is a really good way, to build connections and build community. And again, it's a little bit of a non sequitur when you're talking about social media, but try and be as authentic as you can. That doesn't mean that you have to write about everything that happens in your life, but the stuff you do write, like, you should actually care about, right? You should actually believe in it. And then again, continue to adapt and do something different. If you've got a podcast, what works this year might not work next year. So continue changing it up. And as you go, you can figure out everything. Why are you doing this? Who do you want to reach? And what's your mountaintop, right? You hear that in branding and marketing. What's the thing that you're planting your flag on? You can develop that over time. Let's talk about LinkedIn just for a minute. LinkedIn, everybody's got opinions on LinkedIn. It's still an incredible place to try and build a brand and get your name out there. There's 1.2 billion people. I don't know why this graph was backwards when I found it, but I liked it, so it's in there anyway. But it's 1.2 billion people. It's continuing to grow. Most of the people are right in the perfect demographic for the purchasing agent who just got a job at a big Fortune 500 company, and they're giving him this scrap, right? It's going to be where that person's going to live. People that are just getting out of college who are looking for jobs, the tech people, the sustainability people, your prospects are there in that target demo. Consistency is key with any social media that you got. So you've got to use the tools to continue to get out there, and it takes a long time to build it. But just know that you can't just post one day, put it down for a couple weeks, and come back up for air, a couple weeks later and hope anything's going to change. The nice thing about it is all the incentive structures are lined up. All the social media companies, LinkedIn and everybody else, wants people to look at their platforms. So they are also incentivized to help you learn about the things that you need to do to get out there. So LinkedIn and everybody else has websites dedicated to trying to create content, talking about what works and what doesn't work. And I'll tell you too, none of it is stagnant. It all changes. There was a time where LinkedIn was just a very buttoned up job posting board. Then it got to the spot where people were starting to put a little more personal stuff on there. And then, everybody comment, hey, just keep that on Facebook. Then LinkedIn became Facebook, and now I think it's actually becoming Twitter. So it's changing. I will tell you though, I found through deep study, that there has been one thing that's, consistently had traction through every era of, LinkedIn, and that's posting smoked meats. I don't know. Everybody seems to like to cook, I guess. So, that hopefully will continue to work. But again, things are changing. We talk about right now the LinkedIn space is, used to have to be very produced. Everything has to be very professional. But really lo-fi content works very well right now. What does lo-fi mean? Low fidelity. You don't have to have fancy cameras. You don't have to have anything like that. You can do things in one take and just put it up there. The only thing you should be careful about is the audio. Nobody wants to listen to crackly or bad audio. So if you got the most incredible picture in the world, I actually saw a huge brand just do this a couple weeks ago. They had an incredible video, all the drone stuff, and their mics weren't working when they were doing the recording. It's on everything, it sounds like that. It's terrible. You turn it off in just a second. So audio is very important. But again, that's what's happening now, and it's going to change in the future. You also need to think about, the other platforms that are out there. Again, in my personal life, I'm not a huge fan of social media. But there's a lot out there. People have had a ton of success in this industry on LinkedIn. Reddit's a really big one and is continuing to grow. But no matter what you're doing, you've got to, I double click that. There we go. You got to identify where your target audience is and go there again. If that's, potential future employees, if that's legislators, if that's, manufacturers that you want to work with, right? You've got to think about where they are and go hang out in those spots. If I could, give any advice to anybody who's trying to build anything on social media, is learn how to do some basic editing, on your iPhone. You don't need the whole Adobe suite. There's cheap or free apps that are out there. The best one that I found is InShot. It's super easy. It's everything that you need to do anything on social media. If you wanted something a little more technical, Blackmagic Camera is a really good one. And then you can adjust audio and lighting and do a whole bunch of other stuff there. But having some basic editing with some music, will really help out really anything that you're doing in social media. Let's take a pause on podcasting. before you start podcasting, I think you got to ask yourself a couple of questions. I kind of tend to believe there's an oversupply of podcasts in the world. But you got to ask yourself, what do you actually want to talk about? You know, if you decide one day, hey, I want a podcast just because everybody else has got a podcast, that's going to translate through the conversations that you're having. So, you know, again, when I started, again, I won't call it a podcast, I'll call it a web series. You know, it was because I really wanted to learn about the technology. I was very curious about that, right? And then you got to ask yourself too, what do you actually want to learn about? Leading with curiosity, I think, is incredibly important with anything that you're doing. If you do decide to get into it, you know, the barriers to entry are so low on everything these days. You can start it for less than $100, to several $1,000s, depending on what you're doing. This is my personal setup at home. You know, we started it for under $300. It's a $25 camera. That's slightly better than my computer camera, a couple of lights in case it's dark outside. And most of the budget went into a decent, microphone, so I can make sure that audio was as clean as I can make it. If you're going to do any sort of podcasting, you know, editing and studio software is really good. Riverside is a really nice one. It's pretty simple. You can put your branding in, you know, gives you a spot for, your interviewees to come into. But you don't even need any of that. I got to thank, my friend Colin from Premier Scrap Service. There's apps now that will allow you to record out of the back and front cameras of your phone at the exact same time. So you can see in front and back, sit across from somebody and have a conversation that's almost social media ready right from there. And then I'd be a little remiss, if we didn't talk a little bit about AI. And at some point, I'm going to stop talking about AI because we're getting to the point now in some circles where if you talk about AI, it's almost like me coming up here saying, hey, I've made an incredible presentation for you. It's in this cool software called PowerPoint, right? Like it's just kind of, it's getting, it's everywhere now, right? But I think it was important to add into here. Who's used Notebook LM? Anybody? Okay. Couple. I got to encourage everybody, like write it down, go check out Notebook LM. It's just an incredible tool. One little PSA for it. Say, for example, you've got a whole bunch of papers to read, or there's some sort of report that came out, or a whole bunch of articles that you're interested in. You can put them into the platform. And, unlike, you know, ChatGPT or Gemini or any of those other, you know, LLMs, this one is only looking at the data that you put into it. It's not going out to the internet or other sources. It's only looking at that data. So say you've got a couple of white papers and you want to synthesize them and say, hey, where do these align? Where are they different? You know, what opportunities are in these? You can prompt it and ask it questions. It'll give you feedback only on what you've put into it. The other neat thing about it, getting back to the social media stuff, is it can make a podcast like that based on what you put into it with two people talking back and forth, and you can't even tell that it's not real people. Okay. So there's those sorts of capabilities with video and all kinds of stuff now that are coming out that, you know, you might be watching a podcast and might not actually be real people. A couple years ago, I let AI run my social media for a week. Now, I would not recommend this. This isn't a super thing to do. I did make it clear that every one of these posts that this was an experiment and it was AI, but, you know, you can prompt it now. And a lot of people are doing that to, you know, put in a prompt, give me a post for tomorrow, give me a picture for tomorrow, and then give me a prompt for the next day and just let it run. You know, again, you're losing a lot of authenticity there. And social media, you know, companies obviously don't really like that, as we continue to lose people, but it's happening quite a lot. This was kind of funny. I decided that I want to not write, but I wanted to prompt a recycling book for my daughter. In about 30 minutes, I, you know, prompted, hey, I want a Dr. Seuss book, 2 kids on an adventure. Here's Shapiro's website. Here's ReMA's website, you know, and have them go on an adventure about recycling. And, you know, in about 30 minutes, I had a 35-page book, complete with even the barcode on the back cover there. That's the bottom right picture. And it's got the sing-songy language, right? But again, it's content. You know, this is kind of kids think she loves it, by the way. It's actually a really good book and it's kind of scary. But, you know, again, the AI can create content like that. This is my last AI story, but I think this is important too. You know, so I was having breakfast with, my friend. He's an entrepreneur, him and his sister, and they've got a bourbon label, right? And they're trying to build this bourbon label up and get it out there and get people to know about it. And so, you know, I asked him, like, you know, hey, are you doing any commercials? You do anything like that to get the name out there? He's like, no, we're not doing anything. And, you know, as soon as I saw his bourbon label, like I was like, oh man, I've got the commercial. Like it just was in my head, right? So that's his sister in the photo there, just on the side of the bourbon bottle, right? So you can see her in the red dress and the hat. And I'm like, oh man, this would be cool. Like you could have the lady in the red dress. The Matrix is becoming real. But she's walking through a jazz club or a speakeasy, 1930s vibes. She's walking through the smoke, and then she grabs her drink, right? So I call my buddy at the film crew, and I was like, hey, here's my idea. How much would it cost to do this? He comes back with $10,000, right, to rent the space and get the costumes and the actors and all the editing and stuff, for a little 30-second bit. So of course my buddy, he's trying to start this bourbon label. He doesn't have $10,000 to do this. So I'm like, all right, no big deal. And I go back to my truck, and at this time I still had basically the free version of Gemini VO3. So again, for $0, right, I was able to create 3 commercials, video commercials of this woman, from the label, just by taking a picture of the bourbon label, walking through the smoke. And it even came with jazz music, right? I mean, just like that, right? So again, you went from $10,000 to 10 minutes and $0, to produce something. Again, it's not as perfect as it would have been, but shoot, it's pretty good for, again, think about lo-fi, right? You don't really need all that stuff for social media all the time. So where does branding and personal branding go in the age of social media, right? Well, remember back to your Econ 101 classes, right? As the supply of any shoots towards infinity, the value of it drops precipitously, right? So how do you stand out? Does anybody know who this is? Anybody? Yeah, there you go. That's right. Okay. So this guy, if you don't know him, you probably know some of the people that he's worked with. This looks like, with the exception of Childers, who's a little newer and who I love, everybody else basically looks like they came off of my 2005 iPod playlist. Okay, he is the producer for many albums for all these artists here. He's the co-founder of Def Jam Records, and he's got a little bit of a contrarian viewpoint on how to create. Right, and he's in the music industry, so he's working on ears. Social media is a business of eyes, but I think they translate pretty well. Rick Rubin says the audience comes last when you're creating something. He's not making it for them. He's making it for himself. And it turns out when you make something truly for yourself, right, if you really believe in it, you're doing the best thing you possibly can for the audience. Now, I'm not saying that's a hard and fast rule, but I'm saying if you don't actually believe in the things that you're putting out there, like, don't do it, right? Only do the stuff you really believe in, right? And if you're at a company where you don't believe in what you're doing, you're probably at the wrong company, right? I mean, you got to think about those things. If you're, not if you're in the industry and you don't believe in it, don't try and get into the social media side of it, right? You really got to believe it, because that will come through. But even if you don't take it all the way to the extreme of audience comes last, I think there's a few things you can think about, with anything that you do in life. How do you lead with authenticity, creativity, differentiation, and curiosity? Okay. So that's all online social media stuff. But I'd like to talk a little bit about branding in real life. Remember that economic chart, right? As something becomes infinite, less value, right? As it becomes easier, it's less value. Okay. It's easy to do anything on social media these days. Again, the barriers to entry are just not there anymore. Okay. Anybody can do it at any time. And, my 7-year-old, we do social media, but maybe in 5 or 10 years, when she's got a phone, she's going to be way better than me, and she's going to surpass me in a second. Right. So this is the difficult stuff. It's doing it out in the real world, right? So that may actually have more value these days. So I got 3 things to think about: show, speak, and serve. So let's kind of break those down a minute. And before we go on, again, think about it. The social media stuff isn't the end of the game, right? It's just a tool. Okay. Like, I don't know anybody who can pay their mortgage in likes. Okay. My mortgage company doesn't take that. Okay. You can't take your view count, right, to Walmart and buy groceries. Okay. And, I've seen a lot of commission plans in my 20 years as a salesman. Okay. I've never seen a commission plan that will take your followers and write you a check based on that. Okay. All that stuff is vanity if it doesn't convert into something, right? So how do you make it work into the real world? Well, first, show. And this is a total ripoff of John Sacco and George Adams. If you've ever heard either one of those guys speak, this is what they say. Everything communicates. Your equipment, your yard. Are you showing up with PPE, right? Do you actually care about safety when you talk about that stuff? Your customer service team, how are they showing up? Your drivers, right? They probably see your customers more than anybody in your company. What's it look like when a driver pulls up to a facility? I think that's all very important. This picture makes it into every single one of my presentations almost. This is my favorite recycling picture. But, again, back when I was on the sales team, if I saw a roll off like this, I'm in heaven. This is great. Like, I know I'm going to hit the ball out of the park with the customer. And the customers too, think about it. They've got their customers coming to the facilities. So how are we showing up when we deploy, programs, to our customers out in the real world? I think it's also important, as we're in the recycling and sustainability world, to just have a quick pause on greenwashing, right? There's a lot of conversation, when we get to outside of the circles that we're in here about, is recycling real? What happens, when I put my stuff in the trash can and it goes to the end of the road and the recycling truck that's supposed to take it to a MRF, does any of that plastic ever get recycled? As we think about the stories that we're telling, we have to make sure that those stories are really authentic and they're really real. Okay. Cause that's the biggest thing to burn your credibility is if you say, hey, I'm doing this or I'm doing that, and you're not, right? And we're better than that, right? We've come a long way in this industry, and this is something just to make sure that there's, again, that authenticity with anything that we put out there. Speak. So, again, I would tell you that if you're in your 20s or young 30s and you're able to get up in front of people and talk, like, you have a superpower. If there's anybody in your organization that's able to do that or wants to do that, you've got a superpower. I was actually asked to be in Chicago today for a speech in the vinyl recycling world. Obviously, I'm here, but we've got a young woman at our company who is interested in growing her sustainability chops. She's in Chicago today speaking, and she actually just got asked to do another speech, right? So it's going to be so good for her career, so good for Shapiro that she's now representing us too. So, again, if you've got anybody that shows any sort of interest in doing that, have them talk to me. There's a ton of other people that will support them. But if anybody's interested in that, really exercise that muscle. Okay. That's so important. But say that's just not your thing, right? Say speaking is just not your thing. Well, I guarantee you that not everybody from your corporate office is here at ReMA, but you're probably learning some stuff. Can you write or use AI to write a report of all the good things that you learned here and turn that back into your company and help other people learn who weren't here? Same thing too. Like, what's happening in the news? Can you aggregate something and turn that into your company and help people understand what's happening in the market? And then again, I think all of this stuff comes down to, like, the granddaddy of all marketing and branding is actually sitting down with somebody, right? All the social media stuff, everything else to this point, how do you actually sit down and break bread with somebody? So much happens over those conversations, the coffee, the beer, the meals, that's really the end point. That's where the deals, get done. And then finally, serve, right? Get involved. From a ReMA perspective, there's a ton of opportunities, including the fly-in every year, to get involved in the recycling conversation with our legislators, both at the federal level and the state level. There's local recycling groups where probably a lot of your customers might be. Community education, I think, is really important. Let me give everybody just an absolute layup on how to get into your community and brand. Who's heard of the Million Can Recycling Contest? Okay, a few people. Who's doing the Million Can Recycling Contest? Okay, so some people, but less. Okay, everybody's got a school within some very short radius of their yard. This is like the easiest thing to get involved in the community. If you don't know what it is, it's a program that's basically prepackaged. You can go to a school. You basically get to help educate third and fourth graders, grade schoolers, about recycling aluminum cans. All you have to provide is some sort of equipment for them to put the cans into. The program pays for an ice cream party if they hit certain metrics, a pizza party. It's a big prize. There's 54 schools in the U.S. this year. It is growing like crazy. Next year is going to be even bigger. So if your company's not doing this, I can't encourage you more to get involved. Talk to me, talk to Sabo Das, talk to Jessica Alexanderson, Zach Schemper. Like, there's a million people that are involved in this, that are here in this conference. So I'd absolutely tell you to get involved. And look, I mean, have you ever seen anybody like that kid in the gray that excited about recycling? I don't think I've ever seen anybody. Now, he might actually be excited about the 8-foot tall unicorn that's passing out ice cream sandwiches behind him, but he's only getting those sandwiches because he recycled well. Okay. So it all works out. So let's spend a couple minutes just on the ROI. Again, it is so hard to figure out a 1-for-1 connection to a brand or a post or a million can contest that led to a conversation, that led to an opportunity, that led to it's very difficult, right? So, if you're in marketing, you've heard the joke that the president of the company comes to the chief marketing officer and says, "Hey, I know we are wasting half of our marketing budget. I just don't know which half we're wasting," right? So it's very hard to make the connection and understand really what that is, but let me give you something to consider. There we go. So think about this content, and this is not my words, but content builds community, community powers commerce. Okay. What do we mean by that? You start with creation and content, and that's not content creation because, again, I think it's really important that we don't think about this as just being an online thing. It's so important to be out in the real world, actually doing this, meeting people, having conversations, right? So it's creation of those opportunities and content that builds community, and that builds commerce and collaboration. Again, this industry, as it moves into the future, is going to be more about collaboration than less. You can't be in the future anymore with a closed hand in this space. You have to have an open hand to work together. Digging down a little bit, if you tell your stories, share your values, actually have values and share those, build your brand, and don't just do that, but actually do it and live it and be it, because that's actually something that you actually believe. That's going to build trust, start relationships, and accelerate network building. And again, I think we got to pause there because there's ROI there. Some of my best friends are in this industry, and they only came because Judy told me to get online, and I started connecting with people, and you'd see them and say, oh, you're the guy that does a thing, and you're the guy that does this, and you're the gal that does that, right? Like that helps and that accelerates. I don't have 3 generations in this industry. I've got 9 years, right? So if you're like me, how do you get out there and meet people as quick as you can? Use the tools that you got, right? And when that happens, okay, that leads to deals and sales and growth and the financial ROI. And I also am a big believer in human nature. I don't think human nature changes. That's me. You can read something from 5,000 years ago, and those people are doing exactly the same stuff that people today are doing, right? I don't think it changes. And it's funny, before I put this up on the screen, like I said, my film crew was here yesterday, and we were interviewing the Century Club. And, I've been working on this for, a long time. So this is all in here before this happened. But we were asking those people from the Century Club, like, what's important to, making deals in this industry? And they said, oh, well, the most important thing is relationships, because you do business with people, you do business with people you like, you do business with people you trust. Like, I literally had 3 of the 8 of them tell me this exact same thing yesterday. So people do business with people they know, like, and trust. Okay. So if you're a person that is trustworthy, right? If you're a person that's likable, right? And if you're a person that puts yourself out there so people can know you, that's going to be so good in this industry. This is not an industry of used cars, right? You're not selling one car and you're never going to see anybody again. This is an industry where you're going to continue to do deals over and over and over. And someone's going to move jobs, and someone's going to go over here, and you might work over there. And, your customer might move from this company to this other company and bring you along. This is long-term stuff. It's very important. And again, it's not just about you. It's not just about me. We're talking about a whole industry. We're talking about our future, right? That's what ReMA's here for, right? And then, I'm not, trying to do this, I really believe this. We want to work in a place in a country that understands what we do, understands that we're critical infrastructure, understands that we're an important part of the supply chain. We're an important part of national security, right? All those things are true. How do we all, right? Because we're paying our dues, ReMA's helping with this, but we are all part of that story, right? We've all got to help. And then I think we're all part of it. We're all in the same boat for one more reason. This is my 7-year-old. I told you at the beginning, I'm a big outdoorsman, conservationist. When she grows up, I want her to be having the same, fresh air, clean water, green grass, blue skies, wildlife that I was able to enjoy when I was growing up. Our industry was doing sustainability well before it was cool. Okay. And we're going to do it long into the future. Okay. So the best thing I can tell you is get out there, build your brands, tell your stories, because we are all part of making the planet better together. So with that, thank you very much. Thank you. And if any, oh, yes. Yeah, go for it.
Hi, my name is Megan Stringer. I just loved your presentation. That was fantastic. I work in communications for a company called Metro Metals.
Yeah.
And
Zeusman.
Yes.
You guys are doing an awesome job. I've noticed, it's really good. Yeah.
So I help both our leaders with their communication. Yeah. But what I wanted to ask you is, we have totally rebranded, we've elevated our company, because when we started out, a lot of our images, I've been with the company for a year, we were kind of our imagery, our reputation was kind of on like the apocalyptic scrap scene. Like, we didn't really know how to take pictures, videos, and everything that really were good for the public. They reflected kind of the industry. but it wasn't really elevating recycling the way that like ReMA has totally rebranded, and like just the look, it's just much more professional. And the story that we're telling about recycled materials has totally changed.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, we rebranded and we elevated, but in the process of elevating, I'm a little nervous that we might have pushed people to think that we're a little too sophisticated, and maybe we're not going to be paying people as much as we were before, or like we're not going to be as competitive against the smaller scrap recyclers who don't have all like the fancy website and like the online presence. So there's like this discrepancy. Our prices and what we pay hasn't changed, but we've elevated our look.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering if you see that at all, of like when you make those investments, some people might think like, oh, wow, you know, like you've elevated. And what does that mean about the business we do together? You know what I mean?
That's a great question. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's that one. And then the second thing I'm struggling with is the channel. You were talking about LinkedIn. I hired an agency that's helping us with marketing to customers. And we segregated. We realized that like LinkedIn is the place where we're going to be talking about business, and Facebook and Instagram, that's going to be where we're going to do customer facing stuff.
Yep.
And that segregation is really, I mean, it's totally different the way we talk.
Yep. Yeah.
Last thing I wanted to say, and I'm sorry, I've missed a lot, but, we're not in the business of doing vanity posts. Everybody I work with hates that stuff. Nobody wants to be out there like, I'm so proud of this and that. And
I'm honored. I'm honored. Yes.
Right. I mean, that's just not, we don't want to do that. Yeah. So when I'm working with our leaders and they're older, there's a pushback of like, I feel really uncomfortable with this. Like, what can I say that doesn't look like I'm boasting?
That's such a good question, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean,
that's a lot. I just dropped a whole lot on you.
No. Well, first off, like, I'd love to have a conversation with you at some point. We'll take the LinkedIn and the Facebook stuff. I mean, yeah, you guys are already doing it, right? Where are the people that you want to talk to, right? I'm LinkedIn because for the longest time, you know, my job was national accounts and collaboration. So we worked with you guys to handle some of our customers that were out west, right? So I needed to connect with as many recyclers as I could as soon as I can, right? You know, as we've, you know, elevated what we're doing and, you know, has moved beyond metals, right? How do I meet as many, you know, recyclers of paper, plastic, wood, you know, so 100% LinkedIn's the spot. If you guys are doing other stuff, you know, and peddler scrap or anything else, like, yeah, maybe they're not hanging out on LinkedIn. That's a whole different area. So I think you guys are very wise in bifurcating that. I've got ADD, so I forgot the other two questions, but let's have a question. And then Judy from ours, our chief marketing officer, and I bet you guys would have a great conversation. Okay. Yes, Michael Goldstein. Oh man, look at this.
Michael Goldstein, Alter Trading, St. Louis. Nice to meet you, Tim. Great job up here today.
Good to meet you too. You do that bike thing, right? That everybody should sign up for and they can ride anywhere in the country.
That's my question. How do you sign up to join Team Ludicrous Speed?
Man, you know, there was this idea that happened right before this speech to have flyers. And man, if I would have thought about that a week ago, that would have been wonderful. But
there's a website, right?
There is a website.
QR code.
The QR code. There's all kinds of stuff. But I would say the easiest way to do it is get on LinkedIn and message Michael or myself, and we'll get you the information to sign up right for that. So, but
ride, you can donate, you can sponsor, right? Is that true?
From anywhere in the country. You don't have to be in St. Louis for the ride.
Anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world. That's right. Even better. Yes, we're in Singapore now, so we're global. Thank
Susie,
you.
You came too.
Awesome. Anything else? Okay, guys. Well, I appreciate this industry. I want to see people do well and grow. So if anybody has any questions, like I'm a cheerleader for you. I'm happy to help. You know, so anything I could be doing to help you out, that'd be great. And thank you so much for coming. All right.